Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Crypto Talks. My name is Phil, and today we got the first TA Monday of the year. I mean, I'm super excited for this because I've been waiting to kind of go live doing this for a while now. But it is what it is. We needed some vacation, but now we're back, and I'm solo today, by the way, which is gonna be interesting. Rob is away on a business trip in France, and so here I am. You're stuck with me. Either way, we're going to start this whole thing off with Bitcoin, but we're going to be looking at bear case and bull case for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. Mainly Bitcoin. Obviously, Bitcoin kind of steers everything in whatever direction it wants to. So we're going to start with Bitcoin, and I think I might have messed up this stream already. No, there we go. All right, I'm going to go straight into this. Try to keep it fairly short. So currently we are on the weekly candlestick charts on the BLX, which is the aggregated history of Bitcoin, and I'm gonna build my base TA layer basically, and I want to do that live so that you guys can see how I do it, and maybe you'll learn something along the way as we're doing this and looking at these different scenarios. That's annoying. Hopefully that works. All right, let's see. So again, we're on the weekly charts. I'm actually going to start with doing something that Kevin Svensson did a while back, which was and Hike app, by the way. I see you there. And yes, I do agree that Bitcoin is the top dog. All right, let's see. So we're going to go to the line charts actually, and I don't normally do this very often, but when you're doing long-term trend lines and you want to catch the weekly close on a candle, the weekly close on the weekly here on the line chart will always, that's going to be the weekly close. So we're going to do the TA here first, just to get that long-term base layer first. And so let's have a look at this real quick. I'm going to start with doing a trend line from here. I'm going to anchor it right here, and we're going to see that it's going to kind of correlate to this right here. I'm also going to do one here, and here we go. So what I'm doing right now is I'm creating a baseline of trend lines, right? For Bitcoin, just so we have something to go off of. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to pull it all this way right here. Okay, now we have some stuff, and the last one I want to do is from this peak right here to that peak right there. Now we got some stuff. So what we want to do first is I'm going to look for, because people are talking about, is Bitcoin going up or down right now after the ETF? And so this is why I want to build this, the main TA for the long term, so that we have something to look at. Okay, so I'm going to start with doing an extrapolation of this descending wedge, which is going to look something like that. So you're going to pull from the entry here to this peak, and we're going to move it over here to where the breakout is right there to get an extrapolation of where the price might go. And we're also going to use this peak right here as the nearest, resistance, right? And we've done a video on this before, and you see how this perfectly aligns with our extrapolation right here. So I'm going to remove this extrapolation. So now we have one resistance line, which I'm going to make red just for clarity. And this is a pretty good start, I think, right? Something that I also use for long-term kind of resistance and support lines is Fibonacci retracements and Fibonacci extensions. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pull a Fibonacci from this all-time high, which is the weekly close of the all-time high, right? I'm going to pull it all the way down to the weekly close of the bottom. There we go. So what this does is it gives us an idea of where the resistance levels will be on the way up. Now, this hasn't really followed this that very much throughout the year, because I believe that I'm actually going to remove this, that we used a different fib level for quite some time. And this was the fib level that, for those of you who have watched us for a while before you know and you recognize these fib levels. So I'm pulling that from the COVID bottom right here to the all-time high, and looking at that right there. So here we saw a lot of movement. We're going to go to the daily for this just because I can. And so we had these bounces right here on these fib levels, right? And having these bounces much on these fib levels made us pretty much sure that we had a strong build on top of that, on top of those fib levels. But now it's not really valid, because what you want is this doesn't really tell us where it's gonna go. So this type of fib level is pretty much gone for now. So I'm gonna go back to where we were before, just to make sure that we don't miss anything here. And we're gonna pull that fib level from the peak to the bottom, so that now we have some levels where we might expect it to go. So for example, in the bull case scenario here, which is what I'm going to start with for Bitcoin, we might see it come up and crack through this this resistance line right here, and the fib level is just above there. So if it does crack through that, the next level is all-time high, and after that we're all the way up at 55k essentially. Now I don't think that we should talk about the past the all-time high just yet, but I do think that this is a valid fib level to look at in case of a continued uptrend. And it's don't really have much resistances at all. We have some peaks up here around 52, these small peaks, but they don't really give me that much confidence, because it's just two small peaks. We've already cracked through it there. This is much more significant, because this is the nearest one that we have that is actually significant. It was a start of a bear market. We had a bear market pump and then failed, massively, excuse me, with this big crash. So we're looking at this. This is 48k, give or take 48k right here in between these two. So if we continue our pump up here for Bitcoin, with the ETF starting to kind of turn around and people starting allocating more, we're probably going to see at least a test of 48. And obviously this is the weekly BLX, which means that it's like 1 week behind. If I were to go to Bitcoin right here, it would still look the same, but on the daily, we would have a much higher peak. You would probably see it here too, right? So we're going to the daily on the BLX. And as you can see, it's quite literally closed the daily candle right here on that level, which is exactly where this is from the extrapolation and from the peak right here. So that's what you get when you get correlating resistance line or a support line. There's much more power behind that. So currently we're looking at a downtrend right now, or a small correction after the ETF, kind of sell the news event that people keep talking about. But if we were to continue our ways up here, this is kind of already tested. It will want to come up and retest this, and if it cracks through, the next real target honestly is one of the all-time highs right here. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that double topping with years in between. But that's my bull case here, that we come back up, retest this, and go all the way back to all-time high before we kind of correct, or if we even correct at that point. One of the big arguments for a correction, one of the big arguments for a correction is that the RSI is very much topped out. And yes, the RSI can stay topped out for quite some time. It's been 10 weeks here with the RSI on the weekly being above 70. The last time we had a similar event was back during this bear market pump, or I don't really want to call it a bear market pump. I'd rather call it a bull market, pre-bull pump, right? And we had the RSI get up, topped out here as well for a while. And then we had a big cool down right here, and then we came back up and started pumping hard. after the halving, which was not the halving, what am I saying? After the COVID crash, we had a big pump up because of liquidity and all that. So we're looking at basically the same kind of scenario here in my eyes. We're seeing the MA crossing above the RSI line and the downtrend starting, just like it just did here this week. And for me, that means, okay, we might want to cool down here. So we're going to continue on to the bearish scenario here. But first, before I do that, I'm going to go to the daily candlestick charts just to show you that this fib level that we had, we literally wicked on top of it and then fell over right away, which was something that Rob and I had expected for, this is probably more familiar to you if you've been watching this. We've been talking about this level for, I think, ever since we started doing live TA shows right around the bear market bottom. And we've always said, we have some levels here. We got some levels to break through. We got some fib levels to break through. And 48K might be where we stop out on the, during the pre-bull market run, which it looks like we're kind of doing right now. Obviously we haven't really confirmed this because we haven't really seen a big correction or anything, but that might be what we're looking at here in the future, in the near future. So what I want to do here is I want to talk about where do we go if we do correct. And, now that the TA is already done, the first thing we can see is the golden pocket, which is on the fib level here in between 40,200 and 38,500. And obviously this trend line, it correlates to that whole region. And I would argue, and sorry, we're actually going to go to the Binance chart here because it's just up to date. The BLX is 1 day behind, give or take, or one candle behind. So we're looking at this short-term trend line correlating pretty well with this. And we're going to have to pull that fib level again. I just noticed. My apologies. Let's see, weekly candle close to weekly candle close. And now let's get back in there. Okay, so now we're really zoomed in here. It's still on the daily, but obviously, as you see, we wicked above this, and now we're kind of correcting down. And, the bearish scenario for me would be that we crack through these trend lines, through all these fib levels, and correct all the way down to this fib level maybe, or maybe this support level, which is around 32, 32, 33, or 32K, something like that. I feel like that's not very likely though, because during and this is an argument Rob had for me, and he said, if you measure the bull market corrections that we've had, I'm going to pull these from the peak to the bottoms right here, just real quick. We've seen corrections of about, give or take 21% on average, right? And now we're seeing this happen after a massive weekly, if we go back to the weekly again, a weekly RSI top out. The other ones have been much smaller down here. But, could we correct all the way down to these levels? In my opinion, we could. That would be a 33 to 35, let's call it 34% drop. And that kind of correlates as well to this trend line, which is a massive trend line, much longer term. It's bounced here and here. So seeing that kind of correction after a weekly RSI top out is not going to surprise me at all. However, the last time this happened, and this is something that Rob pointed out, the last time we had a big correction like this, we had some major events, take place. I'm not going to go into that too deeply, but obviously the COVID crash is an anomaly, or a black swan event. But there was a big reason for this downtrend. Some major stuff happened, and the weekly just corrected massively all the way down. But the funny thing is, the weekly, it corrected from this peak right here all the way down to here when the COVID crash happened. It had already corrected on this bottom right here down to about 40. So I don't know if we're going to see a correction on the weekly all the way down to, oversold, under 30, but maybe we'll see one to like 30 or maybe 50. That's certainly a possibility. And seeing just where we have all the support, we've got some major support here, from the shorter term trend line, first of all. Secondly, a fib level, which is the golden pocket, which tends to be very strong. And we also have a correction or a trend line right here, which is a very long one. It's all the way back to July 2022 is where it's anchored. And then we had the bounce over in April of last year or 2023. Wait, that is last year. So there's a lot of support correlating right here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 trend lines, or 4 support levels right here. And that correction would still be let's go all the way down to this trend line, for example, which I think is the strongest support. It's 18%. So that works out for me, in my head at least, in terms of these previous dips. And so I think that might be where we're heading, which is not much further, right? From where we are right now, that would be let's call it a 6% further down, which is not really much, right? However, if we do see that crack and we see it come back down to these levels, where we have support right here and the fib level, that correction, like I said, would be 35, 34%. And that would also give the daily RSI the chance to come way back down to here, where we kind of want to see it. The last time we had a bottom out on the RSI, we were right down here. So that if we corrected down to here, we would have a difference between bottom of the RSI on the daily to if it bottomed out, let's say around here, with 20, let's say 30% up, upside between those two lows. And that would really line up pretty nicely with everything. We could take some time to get to this, but that would really reset the weekly further down. And I think the daily is more important right now because we're on a pretty massive bull run so far. So my expectation is we don't correct much more than this. We could see a longer term, like a sideways move, like through here for sure, and that would reset a lot of things as well. I don't think we necessarily have to go down to have that correction take place. So for me, I'm buying here. I'm buying already at 40. I'm building a long currently, and I think my next buy level is at 39.5, and that's like a protection of liquidation essentially, to get in a lot cheaper. But if it pumps from here, the long is already built and it's already pretty big. So I'm happy with this personally. But yeah, I would assume we could correct down to this trend line right here, which would land us just above 40K. And 40K is also a psychological level, as you all know. So for that's what I have for Bitcoin. Worst case scenario, again, I think would be somewhere around here. The fib level would take us a long time to get back down there. We don't have to go straight down, obviously. Usually we don't. There's some cases we do get these massive crashes straight down. That's usually a black swan event, but a slowdown trend or a shrug sideways as such, for me, is more likely. And now that the ETF has been out, well, it's been out for 2 days. Today's, it's Monday and it's closed because there's a holiday in the States. Tomorrow will be interesting to see if we continue that downtrend when the ETF or the American market opens. If we do continue that downtrend, at the pace that we have, then yeah, I think we might go to 32, something like that. But I think the likelihood again is pretty low for that to happen. Let's jump over to ETH because, or hang on. I'd like to actually do this as well. I'll pull a fib level from this bottom to this peak. If this is the peak, then we have another fib level to look at, because you want to pull it from a bottom to the top if you're looking at where it might correct to. And this is what really puts me, at the 32 level, if anything, because this gives us a correction down to right around here on Bitcoin, which is where we were fighting this trend line for quite some time. So we might see a break here and a bounce on this fib level. However, I think if we crack this trend line right here, or both of them, it's going to be hard for me to say that we might bounce on this, because frankly, it's sort of in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, we have some volume and stuff here, but and this is going to be pretty strong, so we might actually bounce here. But this trend line, I think, is a bit stronger in terms of let's forget that. And I think when you see the next fib level, which is 0.382 here, is lining up perfectly with this peak. I'm going to remove these. There we go. And this is why I'm looking at 32 more so than 38 if we crack this trend line right here. So yeah, who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. But again, I think it's unlikely that we correct all the way down there because of this strong trend line right here. I'm more in the camp of sideways and then up to reset all the the RSI, for example. Let's jump over to ETH now, because I do have some thoughts on ETH here. A lot of talk about ETH currently. How ETH is kind of breaking out of all sorts of trends against Bitcoin and etc. And it's finding its much needed pump, let's say, because ETH has been falling behind quite a bit in terms of if you compare to Solana and Bitcoin, but it's woken up in the past couple of days or weeks here. So we're actually still above this line right here, which is, I think, if I remember correctly, where I put this, it lines up to the weekly closes here, and that's where we found this. And if ETH continues up, then the next real resistance level is somewhere around $3,500, which from where we are right now would be a 38.6% pump. And that really wouldn't surprise me at all. And that's my bull case for ETH, at least in the midterm. Long term, it's going further up than that, obviously. But as of right now, I can definitely see this happening. A pump up to 3,500. The weekly RSI is kind of topping up, but it's still not even turned green. We're not seeing these green massive peaks or anything. So it certainly has ways to move if it wants to. The MA is still further down. It's only at 64. So for ETH, for me, you could definitely see this 3.5K for sure. I'm not saying it's gonna go there, but if the uptrend continues overall, ETH is likely moving at least up to 3.5, and that's where the first resistance is, and that's where I would be ready to open a short or start selling off some ETH. And actually, full disclosure, I don't even have any ETH anymore. I flipped that over to other stuff, took profits fairly early, yes, but it is what it is, right? So let's look at the fib level for this, because we'll do the fib levels for everything. We'll start with this one from the all-time high weekly close to the bottom weekly close, and look where we are. So right above here, we have the golden pocket. And obviously this is something that this is where the bull case, this is the lines that we're looking at. And this is sort of correlating to this 3.5K. It's already at 3.4, but a range of $100 in between, it's not really much of a range, but I would say this is a target for sure. And then obviously, if it really goes off the rails, it's going to be up at 11,500, and I don't even want to start talking about that yet. It's way, way too early. But if we flip this fib level and pull it the way that we should, if this is going to correct from here, we want to pull the fib level from this bottom to this current peak. If it starts turning down from here, we can expect to see, like we did on Bitcoin, a correction down to a fib level. And so we'll go back into candle dailies and have a look. So this fib level right here, the 0.236 is correlating pretty good to this support line and this support line, which is anchored here. And it's right in between. So there's a very strong, you can see how it's bounced kind of on that before, and wick down and through it. So if it's going to correct here or crash from here, if it's going to correct from here, sorry, this is definitely a very strong support level. And like with Bitcoin, we could see some kind of sideways move before we start going back up to here. And again, this is the bull case. In terms of the bear case, I wouldn't really be surprised to see, the perfect scenario in my book here is a correction from up here all the way down to this trend line. And let's say we bounce on it at the same time as we bounce on this fib level right here. That's a 33% correction. That's a big correction. And like I said with Bitcoin, I don't really see a massive correction down like that. I would rather assume that we're going to see a sideways move to reset all the indicators and all that. The daily RSI is kind of stuck on top of 50 here, which is good. If we can kind of flatline here for a while and then it continues to pump again, that's great. Going to the weekly on this, again, it's still got ways to move here, so I would really not be surprised to see that pump up. But if we're going to correct down a little bit, moving sideways for a couple of weeks, up until April, maybe, let's say, when the Bitcoin halving happens. If we move sideways here until that point, the weekly RSI is going to correct down to like 50, which is a good place to bounce for it, right? And I think that's really what I have to say about ETH, because it's such clear on the long term. It's such clear resistance and support, and you don't really have to, go all out and start pulling lines everywhere on the hour charts and the 4-hour charts and all that. So ETH could definitely chug along, do this type of stuff. Maybe then we bounce on this and then we keep going. Like, we could see one of those boring, that's not very nice looking at all. We could see one of those boring kind of uptrends for ETH. It's obviously going to be a lot of percentage gains overall, but why not? Why not see that boring, uptrend just chugging along, up. That would certainly not surprise me at all. We're going to have a quick look at Solana as well. This is so cluttered compared to everything else because I do a lot of TA on Solana, but I'm going to remove that. And right here, it's much easier to see. Let's go to, there we go. Why is that there? Oh, I remember pulling that. That's not very important. But the big levels here are going to be, I think I pulled those on the daily actually. We see some ranges here on Solana, for example. We have this very clear top from this peak, just like with Bitcoin. It looks basically the same, right? We've not really reached it in terms of, closes, but if we go to the wicks, it's a little bit further up, 127. Didn't really get all the way up there. It's more like we bounced on this peak almost. Let's see. You see how that range kind of gives you a nice kind of range of resistances in between there. I might actually keep that line just because. But Solana has been so bullish this past year, and it was up. I think at the peak up here, I think it was up like 1,100% or something. Let's call it 1,000, which is obviously a massive rally, right? Seeing a correction for Solana, if we're going to go with the bear case first, first of all, if it cracks these trend lines right here, these are much shorter term trend lines than I would normally use as major support, but it's a very clear uptrend here. I don't know why there's two of them, but there is. Let's do that. And if we continue here and break that, then yeah, the next support level is at 78, which is these peaks right here. And I think it correlates to these bottoms right here and this peak right here. And I'm going to pull a fib level for this too, because that's going to give us some more clarity. Will it correct down to 78? Yeah, it could definitely do that. I think on KuCoin, it corrected down to 79 or 80 when it had this big crash because of low liquidity. When you had this big one right here, and obviously that was because of liquidity issues, right? But for Solana to correct down to this trend line, I wouldn't be surprised at all that it breaks this trend. But that would also give me I would assume that then the RSI might want to correct down to oversold, or at least close to it like it did here. And where would that be? It would be further down than 78 for sure. And the next real, just using support lines or horizontal support lines, the next real strong, I would say, is probably around this peak right here because of all this trading, around 68, 66, something like that. And that's also where this bottom was, where we had like a bunch of chugging. Zoom in a little bit. We had a bunch of chugging going on here, and then we had a pump that failed here, which chugged down, and these wicks were kind of around the top of these. So that's a textbook, retest, right? And then we broke that, obviously came up, and we've done this. So seeing a correction down through this trend line would not surprise me at all if we go bearish. But then obviously the correction would be larger than that. I don't think that we would just correct down to 78. Yes, that would be a almost a 40% correction for Solana, and that feels like a lot. But remember, if Bitcoin moves down 20%, Solana moves down 40. Essentially, it's much smaller market cap and much more volatile. So let's go for the weekly fib levels again, just to see what we got. So in terms of bull case, if we were looking at where it might go in the upside, this is a pretty fun one because the 786 was probably where we kind of bounced because we went to 127, right? And this is probably where we had our failure here. If we go to the daily, we'll see it much clearer, right? Right here, you see the gray line there? I'm not sure, but it's there on the red one. And that's likely, for me at least, where we failed and started correcting down. If Solana cracks through this, and cracks through 138, which is essentially this peak right here, next target, again, like with Bitcoin and Ethereum, next target is going to be all-time high. And if it cracks through that, I don't even want to know what it's going to be. That's a $1,850 Solana. And again, I don't want to talk about those type of numbers yet because it's way too early to start looking at, where's the peak going to be, and et cetera, et cetera. I would love for Solana to go to 1,850 because I do have that's one of my largest holdings in my bag, full disclosure. But if we're looking at the bearish scenario here using these fib levels, again, correcting down to this around 78, we have the golden pocket right there. So that is, for me at least, one of the big places where Solana might find some strong support. And if it continues kind of slowly down like this, the RSI will be slowly coming down to oversold, or at least close to it, which kind of gives us that bouncy type feel. I think I hit my microphone there, I'm sorry. If we're looking at the real fib level, which we should be looking at if we're looking at the bearish scenario, let's pull this, then this fib level as well, like I said, it lines up with this peak right here, which is around 66, 67, 68, and that's the next kind of place for it to bounce. We might see that. It wouldn't surprise me for it to bounce there. I don't think we're going to see a correction all the way down to, if we can go down to there, that's a 44%. I don't think we're going to go lower than that, but if we do, the next level would be a 60% correction down to 48, which correlates to these peaks right here and this fib level. So I don't really see that happening. The overall market is bullish, and the overall trend is very bullish, and let's see, the fear and greed is still very high. Oh, no, actually, it's come down pretty significantly lately. But last week, we were at 70, 71. And seeing 60 yesterday and 52 today, we're back to neutral, right? And will we see, if you see a further dip down, to correct down to where the levels where I just talked about, we might see some fear in the market. And, obviously, if we're on support levels and fear and greed is showing, fear, I'm buying for sure. The fear and greed tends to be pretty accurate with, when it's green, you sell, when it's red, you buy. And I think it might have time to kind of come down if the trend continues to go down for a couple of weeks, just slowly down or sideways. That neutral on the fear and greed might start tipping back over to some fear. Don't think that'll happen though, because usually when you go sideways, fear and greed stays kind of neutral. If we see a bigger dump down here to see, Bitcoin come back down to, to this fib level or this, you're seeing a big, small. Let's say we see a small trend up here for a couple of days, and then at the end of the week we see a huge, dump. Then fear and greed is going to start tipping back over, and that's kind of what gets people down into that fear thing, where we get these big corrections down, which is also why, where we were on the fear and greed now, which was it 52, and yesterday it was, more than that. It was 60, and then the week before that, which is where the peak happened, we were at 70 plus, and just this little red candle right here on the daily put us all the way down to 50. So if we see one or more of those, maybe we see something like this on Bitcoin, and then like that, I could definitely see the fear and greed falling down to actual fear, which would be I think it's 30 or something like that. And after that, it's just, for me, it's just, I'm buying here for sure. I don't care if it goes down further, I'm buying more anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yes, that's I think that's all I kind of wanted to go through with, the TA today. I didn't want to keep it this long, but being solo today, it's hard to bounce a ball off someone else when they're not here. but yeah, I think my overall kind of conclusion from all the TA is continued uptrend or sideways. I don't really see a strong downtrend from here. And if that happens, there is strong support nearby, right? And if that fails, we have super strong support further down. And that's where you really want to start getting ready to think about allocating back into Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana and so on and so forth. But again, not financial advice. It's just the way I'm looking at it. And, if you found that helpful in any way, if that cleared some things up for you, awesome. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, put that notification bell on, and join the Discord. I'd say this every time we do our streams. If you join the Discord, we're there every day. We're hanging out. We're talking. We do these type of TA things continuously in the voice chats. We share our screens with everybody. We hang out. Everybody gets, to hang out and give their take on everything. And, it's just fun. Join it and come hang out. So that's it for today. And tomorrow we're not doing we're not doing Macro Tuesday tomorrow because Rob is away in France until Wednesday. So we'll move the Macro Tuesday to Macro Wednesday as a one-off. And we're going to talk about, I think, basically what the impact of the ETF will have. And we're going to look at some CPI stuff on Wednesday as well. And give us our take on that. Give you our take on that. So yes, we'll see you next time. Cheers.